Okay, welcome back to the Luca Mele show. I have a very special guest today. His name is Demetrios Angelis.
Hey,
Welcome to the show, man.
hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me here. But you can call me Jim. Everybody calls me Jim,
Yeah,
or Jimmy is fine.
Jim.
Yeah,
Okay, Jimmy. So you have here today your book, The Ottawa Way.
that's right.
Now, if you're watching this for the first time, you probably haven't seen all the information I've shared on Jim online, which I just started today actually, but this will come out in a week or so. Jim was falsely accused of murder. A bias against males in this society, the system, it's broken. Myself and others have experienced similar matters, but we're here to hear Jim's story. So, do you want to get into how it all happened right away, or do you
Sure,
want
we
to
can do that.
maybe do a little past leading into that?
Well, I'll give you a bit of a intro, I guess. So I was born in Canada to immigrant parents from Europe. They came here, that's like everybody else did, for a better life. And I was born here, and my brother shortly after that. And they encourage you to go get a university education, get a good job, start a family, and that's what I did.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're sort of the traditional conservative European family from Greece and Mediterranean. So I did. So I finished my education. I was a nurse. I had to change jobs for health reasons and got an office job. I went back to university, got an office job with the government in Health Canada,
Right.
and pretty much just normal life, no issues, no trouble with the law of any kind. I got married, started a family, had two kids, a son and a daughter. My daughter is the older one, and I the woman I chose to be my wife and mother of my children, the family came across as being very nice, very conservative, traditional family with family values. But I got married, and then we had kids a number of years after. They were starting to notice some changes in her and in our relationship.
Mhm.
And I found out slowly, bit by bit, some of the dark um, issues that her parents had in their marriage.
Mhm.
So, and I didn't know about it and these signs started appearing in my own marriage. I would say just around the time after our firstborn was born, my daughter, our daughter, and Nikki. So, what I found out over time, and this is after our daughter was born, was that my own mother-in-law was very domineering, controlling, and at times violent with my father-in-law.
Ooh.
And uh, it happened with them at that time when my oldest sister-in-law was born. So now what happened with my situation was the pattern had continued.
Right.
So here I am with a newborn, and I'm noticing changes in my wife's behavior towards me, and to a certain extent to our own child.
Mm.
And so there was one violent incident, and after that, I really learned after that to walk on eggshells and not try to anger her or confront her too much because she had a temper.
Right.
And what happened was, even though the actual physical violence wasn't there, the controlling nature was still there. She wanted to know where I was at all times, where my money went from, my income went, and just sort of remain, I guess, in control of the household and of the family and of the marriage.
Right.
Um, and it started getting worse, and I had actually sought out um, uh, a divorce lawyer,
Mm.
even way before our son was born. And so this happened when our daughter was about 2.5 years of age. But our son was born. It was an unplanned pregnancy, and he was born about a year and a half after that. And I felt compelled to stay, right? Because now I've got two children with a woman, a mother who had issues, anger issues, controlling issues, and I found out after the fact that after that she had passed away, that when I wasn't home, she was actually abusive towards the children, especially our daughter. So, one out of the blue, one time, this was like back in 2008, uh, actually April. This was about 4 days before our daughter turned 8. She came with a guy to try and kidnap our 3-year-old son. And I knew this guy. I recognized him because he was one of her former classmates in university. And I always knew that she had somebody else. She had somebody else on the side. Didn't know exactly who it was. But the day that he walked through the door to take my son and his passport, I put two and two together, figured, okay, this is the guy she must have had for many, many years before. And now here he is entering our actual home and being a danger to my son, but also to me. And so my first response was to call 911 and get help from the police.
Yeah.
It took them a long, long time to get there. And when they finally did, they just wanted to dismiss the whole issue as a domestic dispute, as opposed to an attempted child abduction. And left it at that, and told me if he even tried to get me out of my own house. He said, look, if you're not happy with the situation, leave. I said, but I'm the one who called you for help. They came into our home and to take the 3-year-old, my 3-year-old son and his passport. And this guy was not born or raised in Canada. He was born over, I think, in the Middle East somewhere. And that was concern for me because Canada doesn't have any agreement, international agreement with those countries in the Middle East in terms of returning abducted children. So the police officer didn't seem to really care. He says, if you don't like it, okay, fine, I won't force you out of your own home, but you better go and start the divorce process, which is what I did. So I went and started the divorce process. My lawyer served her with divorce papers. She didn't respond very well. And in fact, she didn't want to go to court to determine child custody arrangements and division of assets. She was making more money than me, and she was afraid to lose both, not only custody of the children, but also her income. She was someone who was very, very attached with her income and didn't really like spending it. And the fact of paying me child support and alimony was something that didn't sit well with her.
Yeah.
I even brought her to our priest in his office so he can try and mediate the situation. And it didn't work very well because she wasn't interested in any mediation, any sort of civil separation. I literally had my divorce lawyer had to subpoena her to actually go to court so we can start the divorce process.
Goodness.
So, during this time, she doesn't want to leave the apartment. She's getting agitated and what's the word I'm looking for? Bothered by going to court to the point where she was throwing things against the wall out of frustration. And it was getting worse and worse and worse, and badgering our daughter, trying to intimidate me, get me out of the house, even though I was the primary caregiver for the children. And I went trying to get a restraining order against her, failed. They didn't want to give me a restraining order. I tried to go through my divorce lawyer, said, you got to help me out. You have to try and get me away and the children away from their mother because she's not responding well to the concept of going to court for the divorce. She didn't want to do it. My divorce lawyer didn't want to do it. She goes, look, I don't believe in separating the children from their mother. I said, but these are different circumstances.
Yeah.
Still, she wouldn't do it. So as we got closer and closer to the date of going to court, things got worse and worse at home. And literally 30 days before we were supposed to go to court is the day she decided that she was going to attack me in front of the kids.
Mm.
So here I am trying to fend her off, a petite woman, and I don't want to, and I was 50 pounds heavier than her. And I'm trying so hard not to put any pressure, any full force on her to stop her attacks. And she was going full force on me. The punches to the face, the scratches on the face, trying to um, claw her way, I think she even grabbed hold of my lip at one point to try and tear it off. I was wearing boxer shorts at the time because the kids and I were getting ready to go to church. And she just sunk her nails into my penis. And next thing you know, there's my blood all over the place.
Ooh.
And all this in front of the kids. And so I'm trying to get her to stop. Like I've pinned her on her back and I'll straddle her so she can stop. Pin her hands down and I straddled her hips. And she still managed to kick me off of her, like literally like 3 or 4 feet away from her into the TV. And this wasn't the flat screen TV that we're all accustomed to now. It was the old-fashioned box screen. And the actual box TV fell off the TV stand. That just gives you an idea of what kind of force she used to kick me off of her. Because I don't want to put all my force and weight on her, but she's going all out. And, I get up from the floor and she still wants to come at me. And here I am trying to pin her down. Again, this time I figured I'll pin her the opposite way with the stomach onto the floor with her hands behind her back. And that's when all of a sudden she stopped breathing. And I don't know what happened. The kids are freaking out. And even my son, was saying, oh, no, mommy's gone, mommy's gone.
I'm so sorry.
So here I am freaking out, trying to calm the kids down. I eventually get to the point where I call the police, mind you, but it was all a blur. I just, I couldn't remember what I did immediately after that. But eventually I ended up calling the police and they came. And the way I just described to the 911 operator what happened, she went from, okay, looks like she died of something, and they were going to send an ambulance, but then her tone changed, and the 911 operator started saying, "Okay, we need police intervention because this looks like a possible homicide." The police come, they arrest me. The ambulance, the paramedics take the kids away, and all of a sudden I find myself in charge. First they had charged me with manslaughter, but then 3 days after, they bumped it up to murder, second-degree murder. And I'm shocked. I say, what? And it was like the whole experience was surreal. And it took basically 6 years for them to finally figure out that she died of a heart attack. So in this time, I'm in the system now. They have me in jail. They have me going through trial. They have me going through retrial because the first jury found me guilty of murder, even though the evidence was unclear how she died.
Right.
And during this time, I lose my freedom. I lost my kids because they entered the foster care system. And then to the point where they were put up for adoption because the social workers didn't like any member of my family, any member of my community, and because there were social politics involved. And then they decided we're going to find these other family members, these other parents that had no connection to them whatsoever, not culturally, not in the community, nothing like that. So they can be raised by them as opposed to me or my parents or my cousins or my brother or godfather or anything. So, there mean, I don't want to give too much away from the book, but
Absolutely.
the main thing I wanted to show is and prove and tell people is that there was a lot of evidence that was excluded during my trial, especially the first one, because the prosecutor was able to uh, convince the judge that it was inadmissible in court.
Mm.
And all of this evidence would have exonerated me during the first trial instead of being wrongfully convicted and then having to go to Kingston Penitentiary, wait for a retrial to come back to trial, and then as a little bit more evidence was presented to the jury, they came to the conclusion that I was innocent from the very beginning.
Oh, wow. So how much time did you spend in jail?
Okay, so it took me 8 months to get out on bail. 8 months. Nowadays, people get out within 2 or 3 days or a week at most. It took me 8 months because they were trying to prove that I was, a flight risk, just because I have family outside of Canada and I had a passport. They said that, I would be, I wasn't really a danger to society because that's the other condition. The third condition to get out on bail was if by being released, people would lose confidence in the justice system, right? So they figured, oh, if you release this wife killer, oh, think of all the women out there going to say, oh, we can't trust the justice system anymore. You just released the guy. And I didn't even go to jail. I didn't even go to trial yet. I was at this point just accused, but not proven guilty. So 8 months waiting to get out on bail. I finally get out on bail. They kept me home for about a year and a half, which was basically uh, stay at home, and I can't get out unless I'm with my father because he was my surety.
House arrest.
House arrest, basically, yes. And then I went to trial, got convicted, went straight to jail, and spent time in the Kingston Penitentiary about 3.5 years. So altogether, 6 years of hell.
Oh my goodness.
So I lose my government job, I lost my freedom, I lost my reputation, I lost my kids. And then I lost all my little savings that I had on lawyers. And my parents had to sell their home to pay more lawyers to try and get me out of jail. So my mother had to declare bankruptcy. So it really destroyed 3 generations of my family.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
One of the evidence that I'm willing to share that was inadmissible was that my father-in-law wasn't happy with the results of the autopsy report done in Toronto by the top pathologist in Ontario, which says that it was not conclusive as to how she died. She could have died of asphyxiation, which is what the theory that the prosecutor was trying to push,
Right.
or she would have died of something else. My father-in-law wasn't happy with that. He did his own autopsy report in Montreal, and he said, the pathologist over there said she died of a heart attack. When he presented it to the prosecutor and the investigative police officer and the social workers, they go, no, we don't agree with that. It wasn't done in Ontario. We have our own guy. And he says it's inconclusive, but it looks to him it could be strangulation. Your son-in-law strangulated your daughter. He didn't agree. He didn't agree with that.
No.
He wrote a letter with the help of his son-in-law to apologize to me what happened. We are so sorry what happened. We don't agree with what you're going through now. We want you to get out of the situation and continue to raise your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew what kind of person his daughter was, my wife was, right? I didn't get to see that letter for a year after he wrote it.
Oh my goodness.
Because the police and the social workers didn't want me to see it. The only reason why I discovered this letter, among other evidence, which I wrote in the book, is because with my lawyer, we went to court and says, I want access to every single evidence that you have. Every single one. I don't care if it was admissible or not. And I came across this letter written by my father-in-law saying, I'm so sorry for what happened. This is stuff that the jury never saw. This is stuff that the judges never saw.
Wow.
And so I got caught in this political witch hunt. And I'm willing to show, there's another piece of the puzzle that I'm willing to share with you, is that the prosecutor, she wasn't only a prosecutor, she was also the co-chair of a very powerful lobby group for domestic violence against women. She had a huge following. And as I discovered this, I try to tell my lawyer, we can't have her as a prosecutor. There's a conflict of interest here. Is she serving the lobby group, or is she serving her role as a prosecutor for the Crown, for the government of Canada? And everyone in Ottawa, this happened in Ottawa, capital of Canada, says there's no such thing as conflict of interest. People can wear different roles and do their jobs with no conflict in their roles.
Right.
And that's not even humanly possible. We all have interests, right? If you have competing interests, you have to pick a side.
It sounds like in her case an agenda.
Yeah.
You know, she had her mind set regardless of the truth.
That's right.
Wow.
So it's very, very, like I said, biased against men.
Yeah.
There is also a biasness if you're not English Canadian or French Canadian, because there's that stereotype. Oh, okay, wait, you're Mediterranean, they're the hot-blooded Italian, hot-blooded Greek. And that sort of taints people's perception of you, regardless of what the evidence says, right?
So when you were in prison or jail?
I went to jail first until my trial, and after I got convicted, I went straight to the penitentiary, which is a prison.
Kingston, okay. Yeah. What kept you going? Because I had another guest who was locked up 13 months, and around the 11th month, he wanted to unalive himself.
Yes.
He was becoming like very hopeless. He was also in there for first-degree murder, which they found out after he had nothing to do with it. But that hopelessness and not knowing when it's going to end, and you were in there for years, 6 years, like what kept you going? What kept you not wanting to give up? And was it God? Was it you wanting to reunite with your children to make sure they weren't going to be lost in the system, or was it both?
Well,
what was it?
Once you're in there, once you're in jail or in prison, they really try and break you down.
Yeah.
They really try and break your mental health, your mental strength down. When I was waiting to get out on bail, they kept me in a small, tiny little cell, jail cell, meant for 2 people, but there was 4 of us in there.
Mm-hmm.
We were locked 23 hours a day, no windows. So I never saw sunlight, okay, for 8 months.
Wow.
They try to do everything humanly possible for you to give up, right? So they say, look, if you want out of this mess, just plead guilty to manslaughter, right? You do your jail time for 5 years, 6 years at most, and you're out. But I said, but I didn't do anything. Why am I making a plea deal for something I didn't do?
Right.
And then they got to me through my children. So keeping your children in foster care. I know all these family members came forward for the kids. No, we don't agree with it. We're going to keep them in foster care, and we're going to eventually give them out for adoption.
Right.
They really try and get you to plead guilty to a lesser charge so that you don't have to go to court, you don't have to present any evidence, there's an agreed statement of facts, and the whole truth is hidden, right? No one knows the truth. I kept fighting for the kids. I kept fighting for myself. I kept fighting for my parents, my elderly parents. And I relied on, my faith. I'm a strong, Christian. Most people in the Caribbean, in the Mediterranean, are strong Catholics or strong Orthodox Christians.
Yep.
And that's what got me through it. To the point, I remember one time when I was waiting out to get out on bail, those 8 months. I mean, every month I read the Bible from start to finish.
Oh, wow.
So every month, 8 times, I basically read the Bible just to give me the strength and courage to keep fighting and not accept any plea deal, not to give up.
Man, amazing.
So that got me through it. And even after I got convicted and went to the Kingston pen, or the federal prison, same thing. I relied on my, faith, persistence. I've been through a lot during childhood as well, bullying and stuff like that. And it prepared me for it. And you also learn to be diplomatic with the other inmates, right? Some of them were there to support me because they didn't believe anything that they read or heard.
That's good.
Others were either impartial or didn't know what to think. But then there were a couple who just says, you're in the system, give up, man. Just make a plea deal and get out.
Wow.
Even when my lawyer went to the Court of Appeal and won and says this guy didn't get a fair trial, he needs to be out, the prosecutor in that trial says, look, okay, yeah, fine, we made a mistake with the first trial, but to save everybody time and for him to go through a second trial, just plead guilty to manslaughter. He's out. He already did his time, and that's it. We can move forward with our lives. I said, no, I'm not here just to get an easy way out of jail. I'm here to prove my innocence.
That's right.
Okay? And to also inspire others not to give up if they find themselves in this kind of situation.
Wow, man.
So many men came up to me and says, you know what? I was in an abusive relationship. No one believed me or they blamed me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's very common this day and age, where a woman will be abusive towards their husband or boyfriend.
Yeah.
And even if you bring it up in whatever situation online or wherever, it's almost like the initial reaction from most people, both men and women, is they laugh at the man. But if it was the other way around, a woman describing, hey, the guy I'm with, he has an anger problem, he's doing this, he's getting a little aggressive or a little violent, they're so much more supportive and believing the woman. And okay, I can understand, we have daughters. We look at them like they're our everything, our princess, everything. We don't want nothing bad to ever happen to them. We almost take on a protective role as men over women. I can understand that. But to only believe a woman first, you're going to have problems with that, as you suffered from this personally. And it's just not right at all.
And I get a lot of support and agreement with that. Even, outside of prison, through social media, people that I meet at conferences and stuff and like that, they tell me their own personal stories and experiences. I wrote the book. It went very well. It was very well received by almost all men and most women. Some women thought that by speaking out against this matter and the realities of it, that I was insensitive to women being, subject of abuse or violence. They said that I rub women the wrong way with this book, and it's not. I mean, yeah, I made some very honest observations about the Me Too movement, for example, and the amount of backlash I got online from it was extraordinary. And I never discounted the fact that women, are still abused or physically assaulted by men.
Yeah.
What I tried to indicate clearly in the book is that it's very exclusive. The Me Too movement only looked at women. It had never looked at men and boys.
That's right.
So, and it doesn't matter. I don't get discouraged. I keep talking about the issues and what's happened. What I've lately, in the past few weeks, I've actually spoken to two very influential people outside of Canada who are starting the Men Too movement. So it's hashtag Men Too, TOO.
I love that.
To include men, that are going through what I went through, what so many men have gone through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's, it's like we're talking about Australia and India, both Commonwealth siblings. So you figure if it's going on there, why don't we have something here in Canada as well?
Yeah. Great point. Great point.
We don't even collect the data on any violence towards men in Canada. We don't. And whatever is presented is usually the numbers are really, really low compared to the reality of it, right? Because people either don't believe that it is a domestic violence issue, or the men have become so discouraged they don't even bother reporting the issue. So we have to go about data collected in other countries. And if we go like similar countries like us, like the United States, the UK, and Australia, the numbers are almost even. So it's if we extrapolate the data and you say, okay, this is happening in the UK, the US, Australia, and Canada has a sort of a similar system, policing system, court system, uh, socioeconomic system and mentality. The numbers here in Canada could very well be for every uh, for the 60% of women that claim to be um, abused, right, or assaulted by their partner, there's another 40% of men who are going through the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's 60-40, right? But that 40 is underreported in Canada, right? For one reason or another. I mean, I would love to see a Men Too movement in Canada and everywhere, right? It's not only in Canada; it happens all over the world.
That's right.
I quoted numbers from Europe because again, we don't have any numbers from Canada, right? So I sort of compare as much as we can with other
Those
Western.
are in the book?
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow, good.
So the book is lengthy. Okay, it's over 700 pages, but the way I wrote it, you don't have to read every single chapter. It's like there's 6 stories, and they're all interconnected by one character, which is me, right? So you could read the beginning where it talks about my childhood, my parents, my family coming to this country and all this. You could jump to chapter 3, which is the moment I got married and raising my kids. Chapter 4 is when I end up going to prison and fighting the system, trying to get out. Chapter 5 is a prison story. Right. Chapter 6 is my retrial. And you don't even have to read every single chapter. Whatever you're interested in, that's where you go to, and you won't get lost.
Wow.
Okay. So, but like I said, my discussion keeps continuing with people, and I got this very, very interesting and very accurate poster, and I believe it comes from the UK. It says there domestic violence, and it says, if you think being an abused woman is hard, imagine being an abused man. It says here, no one will believe you. If someone does believe you, they'll mock you instead of helping you.
Yep.
If you call the police for help, you will likely be the one going to jail. Shelters will not help you because they're non-existent. And if you fight back against the abuse by your wife or girlfriend, you're the one who goes to jail.
The shelter thing. There's no men's shelter. I know there's a lot of women's shelters.
There was one in Toronto accepting all. I mean, it was large enough and big enough to
For
accept
everyone not just men
in
alone.
Ontario. No, there was one for men.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but I think during the late 90s, early 2000s, the funding for that shelter was cut. Ooh. So they had to shut down. Wow. So in the end, we don't have any shelter for men.
Wow. Yeah, I'd like to help with that Men Too movement. Let's get that going in Canada.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned previously that you had some support from our Ontario Premier.
Yes. So I was living in when it happened, and shortly thereafter, I was living in the riding of former Premier Ontario, Dalton McGuinty. And I went to his office, and they were not interested. It was clear to me and my family they were not interested in hearing our story, and helping us out in any possible way. And so, and I didn't get any help from his brother either. His brother was a member of Parliament in Ottawa, and he wasn't interested in bringing it to the attention of Justin Trudeau. So fine, I leave Ottawa so I can still rebuild my life in the Niagara region. And lo and behold, I get a chance to contact our current premier, Doug Ford. Doug Ford, let's put all the politics aside, because we're never going to agree with every policy decision that he makes or proposes.
Or any politician, for that matter.
But as an elected public official, he was the only one willing to meet me.
Wow.
Hear what I had to say, follow up with a phone call and written correspondence, and says, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to help you out.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Okay, so he's going to help me get a public apology, and he's going to help me get some kind of compensation for what my children and I went through. Because in the end, we lost everything.
Wow. This was recent or?
I met Doug Ford in November.
Okay, so just a few months
Yes.
back. Wow.
Yes. So I'm happy. He was fair, because when I approached the matter earlier with his office, he said, "Look, we're going through COVID. We can't really deal with this." COVID was gone. He had an election campaign afterwards. After he got reelected, he was willing to sit down and hear what I had to say.
Amazing. That's really good to hear.
So that's where I am with that. Still no progress made at the federal level. They are partly responsible because the prosecutor falls on the federal jurisdiction, right? They're not interested. The current government is not interested in hearing what I have to say or the effects of the unfair trial that I got the first time around and the damages that caused to me and my family, right?
So where is your book available for anyone that's watching this story and wants to read it?
So my book is available on all online bookstores
Excellent.
now. In other words, Amazon, Indigo. If in the States, it's Barnes and Nobles. And if you don't deal with the internet, just go to the stores, Chapters or Indigo, and say, "I want to order the book." They'll get it to you within a few days. It is available also in ebook. Okay, if you like reading it on your phone, on your laptop. And there's also available on audiobook.
Oh, wow.
So people who want to listen to the story while they're doing their errands or whatever,
driving,
you listen to it.
Amazing.
It is also available in Spanish. The Spanish version just came out last year, and I'm getting the French version this year and early next year in Italian. It's a story that needs to be told, and I don't want language to be a barrier in sharing this story with anybody in this country or any other country.
So you're Italian?
I'm Greek, so the Greek version is going to come out sometime next year.
Okay, excellent, amazing. This may be maybe a weird question to ask, but do you ever pray for their mom, for her soul, for the forgiveness of her soul? So obviously she went out being pretty.
Yeah. She was never really religious, and I tried to get her to be, but I was very surprised that her last words before dying was, "Oh my God." So I think at that time she may have realized that she was dying, and she maybe have seen an angel or Jesus or whoever, the afterlife. And so that's why I'm convinced I didn't do anything to her.
Yeah.
During the trial, this was not shared during the first trial, but my lawyer fought at the retrial to submit a letter that she was writing to herself. And in that letter, she wrote to herself that she made a lot of mistakes in her life, bad decisions. She was sorry, okay, but she was scared because now she didn't want to pay for the consequences of her bad decisions. And that she needed to stop being vain, greedy, compulsive, and controlling. And I think she realized what she was doing all those years before was wrong. And now she didn't know how to deal with it, and she was scared to go to court and pay the consequences of her bad decisions. I've forgiven her because I realized that she may have been battling other demons that we don't know about, right?
Sounds like it.
And
especially the force she used to push you off like that with her legs. That's
so she was battling some other demons that she never told anybody about. And so we all have our demons that we go through with whatever they may be. And so you have to sort of be understanding and compassionate to that person, right? There is a part of me that's angry at her for what she did. But as I mentioned in my book, I never lost faith in Canada or in God because of her, but at the system that failed my children and I from protecting us from her. Okay, so it comes out being angry, but the anger is not really directed at her, but rather at the system.
Right. Understood.
Yeah.
Wow. Two last questions. If you want to skip over this next one, I completely
Yeah,
understand
that's fine.
because it involves your kids. So
Yeah.
when you got out,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to ask how it all happened, but when you finally got to be with your kids again, what was that like for them and you?
It's very, very strained, very difficult, because during those 6 years, they were told by the police and the social workers that I killed their mother. And now when the truth comes out, they don't know what to believe anymore. So they're stuck. They're stuck. We were told all through our childhood that our dad killed mom. And now this is new information coming out, new evidence, new proof that he didn't. And so that's why getting that apology from Premier Doug Ford and any other elected public official is so important, because it gives them the validation and confirmation that their father didn't do anything wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm very grateful to him, Doug Ford, for taking this first step, this really, really important step for me and my kids.
Yeah.
And my parents, unfortunately, didn't live long enough to witness it because they died during COVID. And he, not only that, but Mr. Ford will be taking it up with both the city of Ottawa, because they were responsible for the police department over there. And the police did not help me or my kids whatsoever when they could have. And he's going to try and continue to have this discussion with Premier Mark Carney, even though he's really not at the point of
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister Mark Carney, of listening to this story.
Good luck with him. But
Yeah.
That's like you said, very first step, very important first step. Yeah.
And that will help a lot with the closure, but also the rebuilding of our lives.
Yeah. So you guys are rebuilding now?
Like I said, I mostly, with my son, we talk more often because he was young when it happened.
Yeah.
And so he just sort of hears bits and pieces of what people have told him when he was growing up before he got adopted. But my daughter was old enough to believe what the social workers, the police, and the prosecutor were telling her. And that's another part of the evidence that was somewhat excluded during the first trial, but really presented during the second trial, was that every 2 or 3 weeks, the investigative police officer with the social worker would come to her in her new home and, and have a private time in their bedroom telling her, you have to help us out here in trial, because she had to go testify, right? That this is what happened. We're doing this for your mom, okay? Justice for your mom. Yeah. So you have to go and testify and say what happened. And the thing is, though, when she testified at the pre-trial, preliminary hearing, before we actually went to trial, you heard what she was saying, and she was getting everything mixed up because of what she remembered and the lines that she was told to rehearse with the police officer and the social workers.
Right.
So there was, wait a minute. You said that she died, you saw your father straddle your mom when she was facing, with her back on the floor and facing him before she kicked him off onto the TV and put his hands around her neck and mouth to suffocate her. But then how did his bloodstains get on the back of her shirt?
Mm-hmm.
So she didn't die when I was on top of her trying to pin her down. She died on her back when all my blood from my penis and injuries fell on the back of her shirt. So the judge saw that. That's why I don't understand. The judge saw the inconsistency in her testimony, right? And said she's not a reliable, credible witness, right? Because the forensic evidence doesn't match what she's saying in court.
Mm.
And we have proof that she was being visited every 2-3 weeks by the investigative police officer with the social worker. and to the point where you saw them. There was one time they videotaped the interaction between them, and they were to the point where they were like friends. The investigative police officer and my daughter were like friends. You know what I mean? He was giving her a lollipop, and they were laughing, and they were friends. And so he befriended her and helped her rehearse these lines in court. So she didn't want it. She even told my lawyer, "I don't want to testify against Dad. I don't want to," but they forced her to, because that was the only way they could get a jury to convince a jury that I was guilty of murder. So she's still upset about that. I can tell when I talk to her, she's upset about it. And so now she doesn't know what to believe, right? She's sort of caught in between me and my defense attorneys and the prosecutor and the police officer and the first jury. So our relationship is very strained. But with my son, it's better because he was younger and he didn't have to get involved in any of that.
Well, I have a good feeling that everything will resolve within her, and she'll be fully on your side of everything. In time, a lot of things can become clear because we have to learn to get rid of the things we're holding on to that we think are still true. Even though in our hearts we know it's not. It's hard to unlearn a lot of things, especially when she was 8 or 9 when this all happened.
That's right.
So, wow. One last thing. I usually ask my guest if you want to share a joke or inspirational words, one last thing you want to say that might help someone, especially with all this, the men out there, anything like that. You kind of did say it when you read on this, but maybe elaborate a bit more.
My message is for everybody out there, the men and the women. We need to have changes. We need to have changes in the way we think, in the way we treat all cases of domestic violence. Okay, there is a senator. Her name is Ann Cools, conservative senator, who was a very outspoken person about domestic violence. She says domestic violence is not only a woman's issue; it's a human issue. Yes. It's men and women, right. And to go ahead and continue pursuing laws and policies that only focus on female victims and not male victims is inherently wrong. We're keeping Canada in a very dark place. Okay, and she's very right about that. If we don't make the changes that we need for everybody, men and women, what kind of message is that giving that to our sons, right? Our grandsons, our godsons, our nephews, our cousins, our brothers, our fathers? We're telling them, you don't matter. We don't love you. The only ones who matter is, your sister, your mother, your cousin, your female cousin, whatever. And so that's very bad, because if men don't feel loved, valued, they end up ending their lives. They end up getting into substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, other narcotics, or they may get involved in some other risky behavior that either lands them in jail for a long time or possibly dead.
Wow, that's right.
Right?
Well, very well said, man. I thank you so much for sharing this story. Got me choked up a bit. The strength you have and the fact that you're here doing this for all men is amazing.
But also the women who love their men.
Absolutely.
Because my mother, she loved me and she supported me all the way, even though she was pressured to say, forget your son, he's a lost cause. She said, no, that's my son. And I know he's innocent.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right, thank
you.
God
bless you and your family.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me so much.
Thank you for watching another episode of the Luca Mele Show. Remember to go buy his book. It's called The Ottawa Way by Demetrios Jim Angelis.
Yes.
Look at this. You hold it up to the camera next to your face.
Sure.
There, too.
There it is.
Look into this one, too.
Huh?
This one right here.
Yeah, of course.
You get a good thumbnail like that.
Great.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you.
Wow.